Hello and welcome to part 3 of the lesson, Managing Crisis. I've been sharing this series from 1 Samuel chapter 30, and it talked about King David and his men coming back to find that their city, their town had been completely burned to ashes and their wives and children had been taken captive. The first lesson I shared that when David's men came back and found, the complete destruction of the city, the first thing they did was they broke down and cried. These were 600 men who just broke down and cried. And contrary to what we know about men, there's often said that men don't cry, right? If you're a man and you show your emotions or you show your vulnerability, you're given all sorts of names, but that's what David and his men did. They let down their guard, they embraced their vulnerability, and they cried until, according to the Bible, they had no strength to cry anymore. And I share that it's important that when we go through these moments of crisis, that we learn to manage our emotions. We don't shield them. It's okay to embrace your vulnerability. If crying is what you needed to get it out, then by all means do so. If you need to talk to someone, to confide in someone, whatever you need to do to embrace your vulnerability, by all means do that. The second lesson we learned from yesterday was that David encouraged himself in the Lord. When his men came against him and blamed him for the woes and everything else they were going through, they thought of stoning David. And here were men that David had trusted. Here were men that he worked with. Here were men that he relied on for everything. But when it came down to crisis, to moments of crisis, they thought of stoning him. And most leaders go through that. Maybe not physically where people think about killing him, but most leaders get blamed when something goes wrong, right? When everything is going right, it's great. But the moment something goes wrong, you're on the hook. And when this happened, David encouraged himself in the Lord. And I explained that he went to the Lord and I guess perhaps recounted or remembered when God helped him fight Goliath, when God helped him fight the lion and the bear. He remembered that, and so he encouraged himself. The Bible doesn't say that, but I imagine encouraging yourself in the Lord is remembering or being strengthened through those moments about when you think about the things that God's done for you, and that's exactly what David did. The third lesson I want to touch on today, I want to share today, is to ensure that you're making the right decisions. After David encouraged himself in the Lord, he went to God and asked God, should I pursue this enemy and will I overtake them? And this is significant because in his power and his authority, David was used to that. He was a commander-in-chief. He had 600 men who were under him. He could have easily given that direction. He could have easily given that order for his men to go after the enemy, but he didn't do that. It was important for him to ensure that his decisions were sound by going to God and asking God, should I pursue this enemy and will I overtake them? And God said, by all means do so. Go overtake the enemy because you'll surely overtake them and you'll recover everything that's lost. It's important that when we're going through moments of crisis that we ensure that our decisions are sound. There are 3 types of decisions that we can make when we're in moments of crisis. We can make emotional decisions based on how we feel. And David, based on the way he was feeling, the fear, the anger, and the frustration, could have easily allowed his emotions to dictate the decision or the action that he had to take. But he didn't do that. His men were upset. They were thinking of stoning him. They thought about killing him at that moment. Fear, I imagine. There was fear. He was feeling let down, and he could have made any type of decision based on how he felt. But he went to God and sought God's counsel. When you're going through moments of crisis and you're emotionally raw and you're feeling fear, you're feeling angry, we need to be careful the kinds of decisions we make. We can make emotional decisions based on how we feel, but that may not be the right kind of decision we have to make. David could have made a rational decision based on his experience of of being a commander-in-chief. He could have said, look, we've done this before. Typically when the armies come, let's go. But he didn't do that either. He didn't rationalize the decision. He went to God and asked and inquired of the Lord, what do I do? Should I overtake this enemy? Because God could have had a different plan. God could have told him to do something differently. He could have said, wait, don't go now, go at this time. And as I share it, you'd realize that there were specific instructions that he had to follow. Timing is everything when we're reacting, when we're making decisions. Maybe in our own understanding, we may think we have to do something at a particular time, whereas the timing may not be right. We may have to wait to allow the emotions to wear off before we follow a particular course of action. And that's the significance of David going before the Lord and asking him specifically whether he should pursue. Because in the pursuit, as I'll share in the subsequent lessons, timing was critical in how David was able to overcome and recover everything that was taken away. So decisions, ensure that your decisions are right. Seek wise counsel. Talk to folks who are experienced. Talk to people who can give you an objective view and objective advice on what you need to do. Don't base it on your emotion. Don't base it on, the fact that something looks right and something feels right does not always mean it's right. So we got to guard against our emotions when we're making decisions. We got to ensure that our decisions are spiritual. And when I say spiritual, I'm talking about sound decisions. Talk to a trusted friend. Talk to someone who can give you wise counsel. David had to go to God because the people he trusted, the military men that he conferred with at that point, were all against him. So there was really nowhere to go to but God. And there are times that we go through life and there is really nowhere to go to but God. And I shared this yesterday in the lesson. Learning to encourage yourself. Sometimes you gotta go to God or go to a true source. Go to perhaps a spouse. Go to a true friend. Go talk to a counselor. Someone who can give you some wise counsel when you're going through moments of crisis. And you've got to be able to separate the emotions from what is happening. In the midst of the fear, in the midst of the panic, in the midst of all the pandemonium, we can rush to make decisions that may not necessarily be the decisions that we need to make. And so that's why I think David's action here is really significant. He inquired of the Lord and says, should I chase after this band of raiders and will I catch them? I'm sure in his mind, he knew what he had to do. He was the military commander, right? He had all these people under him. He could have easily given those orders. But he didn't. He waited and he went and sought counsel of the Lord to ensure that the decision that he was about to make was right. And so that's what I want to leave us today. Third lesson when we're dealing with crisis is to ensure that your decisions are right by making sure that you're seeking good counsel. Go to God. If you're a spiritual person like I am, I depend on my faith a lot. You may not be there, on that same spiritual level, but make sure, the point I'm trying to make is make sure that the decisions that you're making aren't rash decisions based on your emotions. Make sure that they are sound decisions. And so that's what I want to leave you today on the third lesson, managing crisis. Ensure that your decisions are right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next edition.